Today, I will review the book about Henry Kissinger. It is the biography which was written by Walter Isaacson. As a courtesy, Isaacson wrote a letter to Henry Kissinger that I am writing a biography about you. His reply betrayed minimal enthusiasm. He could do nothing to stop me, he said, but he had no desire to see me pursue the biography. Henry Kissinger was from the Germany, and Jews were increasingly treated as aliens. Among other things, Jews were barred from attending public gatherings, including league soccer matches. Like his father, Henry Kissinger was scholarly in demeanor, a bookworm and introvert. But Kissinger had not gone to Würzburg to become a Jewish teacher, for it had become clear that there was no future for Jewish teachers or even Jews in Germany. Paula Kissinger was more forthcoming about the trauma of the Nazi period. Our children weren't allowed to play with the others, she said. They stayed shut up in the garden. They loved football. Henry most of all, but they were banned to them. Other childhood friends of Kissinger record similar traumas. We could not go to the swimming pool, the dances, or the tea room. We all grew up with a certain amount of inferiority. Every day there were slurs on the street, anti-Semite remarks, calling you filthy names in Germany. I had never seen my father cry until he said goodbye to my mother's father, said Kissinger. That shook me more than anything. I suddenly realized we were involved in some big and irrevocable event. Kissinger had little reason to want to stay. That was when his first real loneliness came. On August 20, 1938, less than 3 months before the mobs would destroy their synagogue and most other Jewish institutions in Germany, the Kissinger set sail for London to spend 2 weeks with relatives and then on to America. Henry Kissinger was 15 when he came to America. Nazi atrocities left a lasting imprint on Kissinger. Kissinger is a strong man, but the Nazis were able to damage his soul. It made him seek order, and it led him to hunger for acceptance, even if it meant trying to please those he considered his intellectual inferiors. Henry Kissinger's childhood experiences, not surprisingly, also instilled in him a deep distrust of other people. Henry Stimson lived by the maxim he learned at Yale that the only way to earn a man's trust is to trust him. Kissinger, on the other hand, was more like Nixon. He harbored a distrust of colleagues and outsiders. Still, another legacy of Kissinger's childhood was his philosophical pessimism. His worldview was dark, stuffed with a sense of tragedy. One trait distinguished Henry Kissinger from his friends. He was more directed, more ambitious, more serious about assimilating and succeeding in America. Whenever Henry got the chance, he would pull out a book and do some reading or some studying for his night school. The process of learning began to enthrall him, even obsess him. He would skip meals to devour his books, staying in his messy room, eating crackers, drinking coke, and mutter himself as he read. Kissinger got A in every one of them, including a perfect 100 in chemistry. This guy was so damn bright and so damn intellectual, it was strange to most of us. And we are the one who had been selected for our intelligence. There was always a seriousness, a Germanic heaviness to Kissinger's demeanor. But Kissinger was drifting away from his religion and he went to synagogue mainly to please his father. Henry respected him so much his mother recalled that he would never have done anything that would hurt him. Kissinger and Kramer talked for 20 minutes. You have an unusual political mind, Kramer said. Later, Kissinger would recall that this really was a startling news to me. It had not occurred to me. Kramer is often described as the man who discovered Kissinger. He thunders, "My role was not discovering Kissinger, my role was getting Kissinger to discover himself." Kramer observed about Kissinger that this man was hungry for knowledge, was also concerned about a personal career. Kramer recalled about Kissinger that his motivation may have been more crass than I originally thought. When he was in counterintelligence, there were people who told me that he was a difficult person with a strong ego. Kissinger had a difficult youth. I did not. I knew who I was. He did not. Kissinger may have had all along a desire for power. He obviously hankers for approval, but back when I remembered is how he hankered for knowledge, for truth. He wanted to know everything, not just what might be of use to him. He is one of the most gifted people you could imagine. The Lord God, when picking from his basket of gifts, usually distributed carefully, but with Kissinger, God showered the whole basket. Concentration camps were not only mills of death. The intellectuals, the idealists, the men of high moral had no chance. One could only survive through lies, tricks, and by somehow acquiring food to fill one belly. The weak, the old had no chance in concentration camp. Kissinger said, "They have seen men from the most evil side. Who can blame them for being suspicious?" At one place, Ralph Faris said, in quotation, Henry began yelling at the questioner, "You live under the Nazis. You know how abusive they were. How can you turn around and abuse these people in the same way?" Henry, upon Kissinger's departure from Germany, Kramer had given him a last piece of advice. "You need an education," said the Prussian with 2 doctorates. "Go to a fine college. A gentleman does not go to the college of the city of New York." The advice reflected Kramer elite and was hardly accurate, but it fit with Kissinger's new ambitions. Kissinger strongly opposed the creation of Israel. He said it would alienate the Arabs and jeopardize US interest. I thought it was a strange view for someone who had been a refugee from Nazi Germany. Another friend of Kissinger told that he was deadly serious all the time. He never liked to chase after women. His famous wit were not evidence when he was an undergraduate. He had no judgment, no feel for what was happening around him, no empathy for people he was with. He was clumsy, socially awkward. Basically, Kissinger was a very limited person in an undergraduate. Kissinger said, "He learned more from me than anyone. He is a very skillful flatterer, which is a part of his success as a negotiator." Man's knowledge of freedom, Kissinger argued, must come from an inner intuition. Of academia, Kissinger was fond of saying, "The disputes are so bitter because the stakes are so small." A revolutionary situation occurs when a leader such as Napoleon Bonaparte does not accept the legitimacy of the international order. Kissinger wrote, "In such cases," he argued, "negotiations are futile." One of the colleagues recalled that Kissinger's arrogance was hard to bear. He had a manner of carrying himself as if he were a senior faculty member at Harvard. Harvard offers more prestige but little money. Kissinger, who was 31, said, "Once a war becomes nuclear, it is much harder to set any effective limits." There is in Kissinger A friend once said, a deeply consuming need to make everybody love him. Rockefeller Jr. was his colleague. Rockefeller knew how to make people feel important, how to create an aura of fellowship, how to listen, and how to be frank and straightforward about his wishes in a way that put people at ease. Kissinger mastered none of these attributes but respected them all. The willingness to engage in nuclear war when necessary is part of the price of our freedom, Kissinger wrote. Kissinger was on the road to fame and power, had returned to Harvard with the implied understanding that he would soon be tenured, and gave the sense that he felt Harvard would be lucky to have him as a permanent faculty member. Bismarck urged that foreign policy had to be based not on sentiment but on an assessment of strength. Kissinger wrote, that would also become one of Kissinger's guiding principles. Similarly, Bismarck had an attitude toward truth that critics said fit Kissinger's as well. The root fact of Bismarck's personality, Kissinger wrote, was his capacity to comprehend any moral standard outside of his own will and ambition. For this reason, he could never accept the good faith of any opponents. They believe, as Kissinger had once written of his 19th century subject, that foreign policy had to be based not on sentiment but on an assessment of strength. On a more personal level, ethical concerns were not paramount for either Kissinger or Nixon when it came to plugging leaks. Kissinger and Nixon both had degrees of paranoia. Kissinger was acutely aware of the world around him and self-aware of his role in it. Nixon was not. From the start, Johnson later said, it was obvious that Kissinger was extremely insecure and had an obsession which persisted throughout his White House years that the State Department and Foreign Service were determined to undermine him. One key component of Kissinger's brand of realism was his special emphasis on the role of military might. Throughout history, he wrote, the influence of nations have been roughly correlated to their military power. Another aspect of Kissinger's realism was his lack of concern about supporting democratic forces and human rights movements. In authoritarian countries, he was more comfortable dealing with strong rulers like Shah of Iran, Assad, Sadat, than with the messy democracies in Europe and Israel. Kissinger gave one of the most important speeches of his career, in which he explained why he felt that morality had only a limited role to play in foreign policy. You don't understand Henry. Henry does not lie because it is in his interest. He lies because it is in his nature. Ronald Reagan told Ford, I would use Henry a lot, but not as a Secretary of State. I have been all over this country the last several years, and Henry Kissinger carries a lot of baggage. I could not accept that. My own people, in fact, would not accept it.